Hello, 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 everybody. Whoa, this light is really bright today. Thank you guys for tuning in and joining. I know today is a crazy evening with a lot going on. So I appreciate you guys stopping in and giving us a chance to talk retro, but more specifically, today's topic, talk music. So, music for a lot of you probably has a tremendous amount of meaning because I know it does for me. I got my Guns N' Roses shirt on from the last tour, Not in This Lifetime. I'll tell that story coming up. But when we talk about music, there is so much out there. And we'll get into the music in a minute. But first, and most importantly, again, welcome everybody. Taking a look down the list, I see Brian K. Welcome, AAU, Coaster Mom. Welcome, Christina G. Welcome. I saw Lisa T earlier, Coach N. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in this evening. I do want to let you know, first and foremost, as always, and hey, Shauna, our games are open. Feel free to gamble and duel as much as you like. I do want to say the stakes have been turned up. Now, gambling, you can only gamble up to 30,000, but dueling, and let me confirm the numbers because I don't want to get it wrong for you. You can now duel each other for a whopping 300,000. So feel free to duel away, have some fun, and let's talk music. So, where to begin? We know we could very easily talk the Mamas and the Papas. We could talk Smokey Robinson. We could talk Elvis. We could talk ABBA. We could talk Michael Jackson, which we will. We could talk Madonna. There have been so many musical influences over the years. And we'll talk to them later. We're going to focus tonight on rock and roll and really the rock genre that I grew up with through the late 70s, the 80s, and a little bit into the 90s. I also have a couple stories for you. As always, we cannot have a retro stream without some of my stories. So we'll definitely talk Milli Vanilli. Not so much Milli Vanilli today, Coaster Mom, but when we talk pop, we'll definitely talk Milli Vanilli. The list goes on and on. We could talk Run DMC, Public Enemy, House of Pain, you name it. Technotronic, CNC Music Factory. So many different artists have touched us in so many different ways. But like I said, today we're going to focus on rock. And I'm going to start and fill you in on why I have this attachment to rock, as I know so many of you do as well. Growing up for me, hey, Sean, welcome in. Growing up, I didn't really get into music until an older age. I was a hockey kid, as you guys know. So we were out on the streets playing ball hockey. And hey, Trip Billy, we played ball hockey. We were out all day long. You know, the parents would open the window and yell, dinner, lunch. And, we'd come running in and then right back on the street. So I didn't get into music till older. And I was in a very interesting position. I have two cousins, one on each side of the family. One was a big into rock. And every time I go and hang out with him, we would listen to rock. I had another cousin that was into the rap hip hop game. So the Run DMC, the Public Enemy, MC Hammer, all that stuff. So I really grew up listening to both sides of the coin. A little bit of an identity crisis, especially in the 80s, right? But rock took over. And, I have stories. For me, the first real band I got into was Duran Duran. I'm sure most of you know Duran Duran, but if the name Duran Duran doesn't ring a bell, think of songs like Rio, The Reflex, New Moon on Monday, Hungry Like the Wolf, Girls on Film. It goes on and on, right? They were huge. Um, I remember a time my cousin and I we were over at my grandparents, and they were having a garage sale. So what else do kids do when the older folks are having a garage sale. Well, we wreak havoc, and we took apart their dining room set, and we took all the dining room chairs and couch cushions, and we built a boat. And what did we do with this made up boat of dining room and living room furniture? Well, we sang Rio over and over and over again because Duran Duran, that was our jam. And I was lucky enough too. Yeah, you saw them in concert, coach. Me too. I was so lucky growing up with Canada's Wonderland, which now, is not far from where I am. Back then, it was a trek to get to. And they had in their outdoor venue, you could buy tickets. They were $8, $12. And I got to go see Duran Duran live for my first time. And it was, I know some of us, watching the Disney fireworks, it brings a tear to our eye. Seeing some other artists bring a tear to our eye. While seeing Duran Duran that first time, it was like, oh my God, my childhood is coming true. Fast forward years later, um, when I was working at another company that I'm at now, we did a staff outing and we went to see Duran Duran at what was the Air Canada Center where the Leafs and the Raptors play. And here I am with all of my, counterparts at this company who really only knew me in a business life. And here we're rocking out. I had the air sax going in Rio, and we were just getting down. So Duran Duran was me all the way growing up. Definitely got to a point. Actually, before I get to that story, I'll tell you another quick story. When I would go to sleep at night, when I started getting into music, I like to listen to music when I went to bed. And of course, anyone who's been to the Toronto area, you probably remember the radio station AM 640 with Tarzan Dan. It was the big station to listen to. Um, but I needed something to really focus on. So the two albums that I used to go to sleep with, hey Max, welcome. Yeah, no worries, buddy. The two albums I would listen to nonstop every night to go to bed. The first one was the Dick Tracy soundtrack. I don't know if you guys remember the movie Dick Tracy, but the music in that movie, a lot of it was done by Madonna, but it was a killer soundtrack. So I would listen to that. And the main album, my number one, was Def Leppard Hysteria. What an unbelievable soundtrack. So I would listen to this, and it's on cassette, right? And there was no auto flipping sides. I would put it in, and I'd lie in bed, and I'd listen to the whole of side A. Then I'd get out of bed, I'd eject it, flip it into side B, and I'd listen halfway through side B, and at the exact same song, I would fall asleep every single time. And so I really went to sleep every night listening to Def Leppard. Um, I never had a chance to see Def Leppard live myself, but certainly, when, and you guys will remember the Freddie Mercury tribute concert they did over in the UK. Of course, Queen, and we'll definitely talk about Queen. But when they did the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, and they had, Def Leppard and Guns N' Roses and you name it, they were there. That was my first time getting to experience Def Leppard live, with the huge hair and everything. And I say live, but live on TV, because here in Canada, Much Music, they were showing it. And I actually remember popping my VHS in, hitting record, and I still have that VHS today. The quality is terrible, but it still plays. And I remember just watching Def Leppard, and I'm like, man, someday I want to be on a stage like that. So there's so many more stories to talk about, and so many bands that just, really shaped how we grew up. And you could argue, everybody you talk to will say their generation of music was the best. They had the best bands, they had the best singers. I'm going to argue it was, my generation and our generation. Yeah, we got into the Beatles, the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles, holy moly. The Eagles Hell Frozen Over CD is probably one of my favorite CDs of all time. That music, that was like, an earmuffs, kids that are out there, but like date night, that was the CD that was on, was Eagles Hell Frozen Over. The Doors, I myself wasn't huge into the Doors, but their sound was just amazing, right? Floyd was on another level, right? We had, here at our museum, they had what do you call it, a planetarium. And at night on the weekends they would do 3D laser shows. So they did a 3D laser show for Floyd, and I remember going to that, and just it was so chill and so cool. I mean, nothing, beat the sound that Floyd would come up with. And then of course you move over, get a little bit harder, and we start talking Aerosmith and AC/DC and Van Halen, in that Def Leppard realm. And those are all huge influences for me. I remember in high school, grade 9, at the school dance, AC/DC Shook Me All Night Long comes on, and everyone's like, yeah. And that guitar solo happens, and all the guys are sliding on their knees across the dance floor, just rocking out to Shook Me All Night Long. And it's stuff that, still holds up today. If I'm driving the car and Back in Black or Shook Me comes on, I'm right there. And if, with AC/DC, Hell's Bells, like so many songs that really shaped, how we grew up and what we listened to. Aerosmith. I mean, we all know, with the Rock and Roller Coaster, and we hear those tunes, but Aerosmith was something else. The first time I heard Aerosmith, I think it was Aerosmith Pump, was the album, again on cassette, that I borrowed from my buddy Lonnie. And Lonnie, if you're watching, thank you so much for letting me borrow that cassette, because I listened to that forever. And I remember when I gave it back, I like begged my parents, I'm like, please, can I go buy this album? And I listened to it over and over again. When I got a little older, I had the honor of seeing Aerosmith live. We sat sixth row, off to the side, but it was still sixth row for Aerosmith, and it was one of those concerts that was just earth shattering, like mega superstar. Whitesnake, yeah, coach, for sure. Whitesnake was huge, such a huge influential band, and we forget there's so many bands from that time that, had the one hits or the two hits that we kind of forget about. And, those songs will always be synonymous with those artists. And Whitesnake is just, they're one of those that every time you hear a song, you hear the sound. You don't even have to look at the radio or hear any of the lyric. You just hear kind of a few chords and you're like, oh yeah, takes me back. Zeppelin. How can I even move forward without talking about Zeppelin? Zeppelin was, I don't care who you are. If you liked rock music, Zeppelin was up there. Stairway, and we know it's the forbidden song. You do not walk into a guitar shop and start playing Stairway. But Stairway, it takes me back to, oh man, grade 6, grade 7. You're at the dance, the guys on one side, the girls on the other side. They put on Stairway, and every guy would run over to grab a girl to dance with, because it was like, what, 7 minutes or 8 minutes? And it was like the most awkward, 7 or 8 minutes of all time. But you're like, yeah, I get to dance with this girl for 7 or 8 minutes. Yeah, Stairway. I actually listened to it recently. I hadn't listened to it in a long, long time. Um, in the summer, when I was putting together a playlist for my son to take to overnight camp, I was just listening to a bunch of old songs, and I listened to Stairway again, and it just took me right back there. It was so incredible, so incredible. Your senior prom theme with Stairway, that's amazing. That is so awesome. Um, AC/DC. Holy moly. AC/DC was another one of these bands. Angus, such an unbelievable sound. And I know I already talked about them a little bit, but I can't say enough good things about AC/DC. Deep Purple is another one where you listen to those hits, and you hear the music and you're like, whoa, it takes you back. I don't know if any of you guys played Rock Band. There were a couple Deep Purple songs in the Rock Band library that I just love to play. It was so amazing. Hey, John, welcome in. Hey, guys, I want to give a round of applause. Chef John is in the house. Thank you for joining, Chef John. Fantastic smoking session you did the other day. If you haven't watched it yet, check it out on the channel. He did an amazing job smoking some pork and brisket, and I'm waiting for you to drop it off, John. Snoopy, hey, what's going on? Thanks for hopping in. Bon Jovi. And I'm kind of moving my head because there's some stuff here, behind that I want to see. Kiss and the Who, like the Who, holy. Okay, let's talk about the Who for a second. Wow. Talk about a sound and legendary. And I don't know about you guys, whenever I think of the Who, I think of Rush. To me, those two go side by side. And I know Rush is a big Canadian band. They've definitely had some influence across the states. Okay, hold the phone. Stop everything. Christina G, am I reading that correctly? Bon Jovi is your cousin? Are we talking like John Bon Jovi is your cousin? Or like somebody else in the band is your cousin? 'Cause I'm about to fall off my chair and totally geek out right now. Um, we've seen Bon Jovi. I don't even know how many times we've seen Bon Jovi live. Um, the boss upstairs, Dee, is a huge Bon Jovi fan. Um, she's seen him so many times. One of the shows she went to, I couldn't go because I wasn't feeling well. Bon Jovi, nice, Brian. Um, one of the shows I couldn't go to, I wasn't feeling well. John Bon Jovi. Oh my God, Christina. Wow, that is amazing. That is so cool. Um, I'm speechless. I just gotta. Wow, cool. Well, next time you talk to good old John, you tell him that that your close personal friend, Sam, and feel free to share the channel out to him, is a huge fan and really appreciate all his work. Holy moly, Christina dropping a bomb on us tonight. Um, so yeah, the boss, she went to see Bon Jovi. The show I wasn't there, sitting a little over to the side of the stage. And when they came off the stage, they kind of go down the stairs and into a little tunnel. And of course, when the ladies are out and the men are home, they get a little crazy. So they're screaming and shouting, and I can't remember the guy's name, and it's terrible because he's the drummer and I'm a drummer, and I always try to show the drummers respect. But he threw his towel up, and she caught the towel, and she comes home at whatever time it is, and she's like, Sam, 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 I got the towel, I got the towel. And I'm like, you got Bon Jovi's towel? She's like, no, the drummer, but it's still from the band. And I was like, awesome, but it's gross. Because as a drummer, they can get pretty sweaty. Um, but yeah, Bon Jovi is amazing. I'm still in shock right now. We have the same last name, but he is related somehow. That is so wicked cool. I don't even. That's just mind blowing, Christina G. Holy moly. Um, yeah, so Bon Jovi, so good. Actually, I heard a story. You guys know Bon Jovi did the music for Young Guns, right? Of course, Blaze of Glory. So I don't know if you know the story about Blaze of Glory. And I don't want to talk too much about movies and music, but it's Bon Jovi and we're talking rock, so I can relate it. So I heard a story that Bon Jovi, Emilio Estevez, and Charlie Sheen, they were all out having dinner. I think they were in the middle of filming the first Young Guns, and they were out. It was like 2 in the morning. They're at a 24-hour joint having a coffee and whatever, just talking. And apparently the story goes, Bon Jovi said, you know, I want to do the music for the movie. And they said, okay, well, we don't even know. And apparently, like in 10 minutes on a napkin at this little, diner, he essentially wrote Blaze of Glory. And um, that napkin exists and is framed in, was it Charlie Sheen's? I can't remember who was that told the story. Maybe it was Emilio Estevez. In one of them, somebody has that napkin framed where he wrote Blaze of Glory, which was so cool. It was such an amazing story, how such an infamous song can be written at a diner at like 2 a.m. on a napkin. Foreigner, I'm ducking. Foreigner, what an amazing band. Classic tunes. I didn't talk about Metallica. Oh boy, Metallica. Again, for me, it was the Black Album. Enter Sandman was the song. I was more of a Guns N' Roses fan, and I'm holding off on my Guns N' Roses story a little bit, but Metallica, that Black Album broke broke down barriers. Sure, a lot of their other albums, Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning, all that stuff was so crazy. Metallica was amazing. Um, as they got older, And as time moved on and the whole internet thing started happening with Napster and LimeWire, and they really took a hard stance about protecting their music, which I can't blame them for. But some of the antics kind of soured me a little bit on them. But it's undeniable. Metallica, even though it's all all power chords, they were amazing. Um, One, that song One. So when we were in my band days, and I'm going to tell some band stories towards the end of the stream. So stick around for that. But whenever we'd practice, our guitarist, his name is Darren. I don't know if Darren, if you're here or not, but we'd always play One, and I get the double bass going. Oh, it was awesome. And he get the guitar solo going, and yeah, Metallica, such a hard band, such a fun band, and such great music. I'm just trying to see, am I missing anyone before I get it? Oh, Kiss. How can we talk about music and not talk about Kiss? And we know Kiss recently had some issues with COVID and their tour. I'm not sure if they've resumed it yet. I know Paul Stanley is all good. Gene Simmons was recovering. So hopefully they'll be back on the road soon. Metallica just spoke to me and stuff I was living when I was a kid. Yeah, Metallica. But Kiss, and again, I wasn't into Kiss when I was younger. I was very late getting into Kiss, but their music was just, you could watch it and just get mesmerized. Like these guys were just rock gods in a sense, right? They were playing a role. And I think part of it was the makeup, right? It wasn't just like we see a lot of these other guys, standing up there playing, doing their thing. These guys were full out in a role, putting on an act in a real show, which was so amazing. And I think why Kiss will always be one of the greatest bands of all time. And I can't, talk about greatest bands of all time without talking about this one. Where is it? Right about here in the middle, the Rolling Stones. So the Rolling Stones are one of my personal favorites. My dad was a huge Stones fan, listened to it all the time. Um, I had the privilege of seeing the Stones a couple times live. The first time, I think it was the first time I ever saw the Stones, was at the CNE, so up here at the Canadian National Exhibition, where the Blue Jays used to play before they were in the Dome. So big outdoor stadium. Stone Temple Pilots were opening up for them, who were, I don't consider SDP back this far, but Stone Temple Pilots, amazing. Plush is like my favorite karaoke song. um, so we got there and we had floor seats, and of course, it poured the entire show. So everyone had the umbrellas up. You couldn't really see anything. But the Stones, when that music hit, it didn't matter how cold and wet it was or how much we knew we were going to be sick, the coming days. But the Stones were amazing. I then saw them again in the Dome several years later. And who was it that opened up? Spin Doctors opened up. I don't know if you guys remember Spin Doctors, but Two Princes. What was that other song? Uh, can't be wrong. What is I forget what it's called now. Shoot. Um, I love the Spin Doctors. Such a cool sound. And actually, one of the first concerts I ever went to on my own with no adult supervision was to see Spin Doctors. And it was Screaming Trees, Soul Asylum, and Spin Doctors. And Spin Doctors were amazing. Such a fantastic show. So I do want to tell you, talk a little bit about Guns N' Roses. Here's another little graphic. See, did we miss anyone? Oh God, there's so many more in here. Alice Cooper, man, Alice Cooper is phenomenal. The golfer extraordinaire. Um, he was awesome. Ozzy Osbourne, of course, Ozzy. How can we forget Ozzy? Sharon. Osbourne's was so classic. But Crazy Train, such a classic song. Warrant and Slayer, Mr. Big. Okay, I don't consider Mr. Big to be that retro, but Mr. Big has such a soft spot in my heart for, a couple of their songs. Whenever I think Mr. Big, I think Extreme more than Words. You know, Extreme was so good, and of course, and I forget the guy's name who went on to sing kind of part time for Van Halen, but More Than Words. That is a classic song that I grew up with. Was so awesome. Hey, I don't want to talk about all of these because there's so many. But I do, I want to talk to you guys about Van Halen. I want to talk to you guys about Guns N' Roses. So maybe let's talk Van Halen. Oh, Europe, I see in there. Yeah, it's the final countdown. Such a good hockey song, right? Anyways, God, I can't believe I just did that on a stream. Um, so Van Halen, and I know Lisa T, you are the Van Halen, extraordinaire. Which the opening song I played, I hope it came through. Jump, for Lisa T, that one was for you. I've had the pleasure of seeing Van Halen several times. I saw it once with David Lee Roth, with Sammy Hagar, with the dude from Extreme. Actually, I think twice with Sammy Hagar. The Sammy Hagar Van Halen was my favorite. I just, I loved his sound. I loved how he kept everybody together. But when you see Van Halen live, and we've heard the albums, we've seen the videos. I don't know how many of you guys have had the chance to see Van Halen live, but something in their performance, whatever Eddie was doing, how he could work that guitar was next level. And as far as I'm concerned, he's the number one best guitar player of all time. Yeah, people will say no, Joe Satriani and others. No, Eddie Van Halen, as far as I'm concerned, is the best rock guitarist of all time. Um, there's just something when you hear those songs, the feeling that it brings out of you. You go to a Van Halen concert, it could be 3 hours and you leave there feeling like just a different person. And yeah, it's hard, but it's just emotionally invoking, which is something that is so hard to get from music. So let's talk Guns N' Roses for a minute. So Guns N' Roses, growing up after Duran Duran, I got into Guns N' Roses. GNR Lies and Appetite were, my teenage years. Um, when the parents took us to Niagara Falls and they had one of those booths where you go in and you pretend to play the instruments and you make a music video. So when we went in, they said, "Oh, you guys want to do a music video? What do you want to do?" I said, "What Guns N' Roses do you have?" And they're like, "Well, we have this." I said, "I don't care. I don't want any other song. What Guns N' Roses do you have?" And the only song they had was "Sweet Child of Mine," which of course we performed and knocked it out the park. But growing up with Guns N' Roses, and I think was it 80 or 85, 87, somewhere in there, when they did the Guns N' Roses Metallica Faith No More tour, I desperately wanted to go, and I was unable to go. That's fine. I totally respect, the decision. Say, hey, I was too young to go on my own to a show like that. Perfectly a-okay. I did not think that was going to be the last opportunity to see Guns N' Roses live for 20 years or however long it's been, 30 years. So, when Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 came out, it was just a whole new sound. And I'm like, oh, this Guns N' Roses is getting even better. And then Spaghetti Incident came out, and I said, oh, there's problems here. And then they went on their break. I said, if Guns N' Roses ever got back together, I didn't care what it cost or where it was. I was going to make the drive and see it because there were only at that point two artists that I regretted not seeing when they came through. One was Guns N' Roses and one was Michael Jackson in 1985. But that Michael Jackson story is for the pop stream. So when Guns N' Roses announced they were coming back together and they were going to do this tour, my mind was blown. I called every contact, every connection I had to say, how can I get tickets for this? So it was at Rogers Center, aka Skydome, where the Blue Jays play. And I had a contact that said, we can get you some tickets. However, you have to wait till after they go on sale. So if any of you guys have done a deal with, Contact before, and you hope that they come through for you. This was a big risk because I didn't want to miss a chance of getting tickets, the contact falling through, and not being able to go to the show. So I nervously sat by my computer as tickets went on sale, and it sold really, really quickly. And I got a call from my contact that said, okay, I got tickets for you. So imagine a baseball stadium. You have the lower level, and then they start doing the decks. So I was on the second deck, front row of the second deck, and the seats would have been equivalent to directly behind home plate. So they would have been dead center to the stage just across the venue. I forget how much they were, to be honest. They could have been $200. They could have been $250. I don't remember, but I didn't care. I was like, yes, please. I go, I'll take 4, because I knew myself and D were going to go, and we would not have a hard time finding other people to go. So I was freaking out the entire day leading up to the show. We walked outside. I saw the merchandise, and I'm like, I don't know what to buy. They had the classic kind of shirt that I got. They had the Appetite for Destruction one. But I'm like, nope, I want a shirt that lists all the cities on the back, like the official concert tee. So I got this one. And it was an interesting show. If I remember correctly, it was the Arkells who opened up, and the Arkells were amazing. And they're from Hamilton, so just down the highway. And when Guns N' Roses came on, when they started putting the graphic up, Guns and Roses, I immediately was losing my mind. The show started. It may have been 35 seconds into the show, and I can't even speak now. The earplugs, thank you, world. The earplugs came out, and I had to listen to it naturally. Hearing Slash play guitar live was right up there with Eddie Van Halen. To me, I consider Slash number 2. The way he could play and the sounds he would get was second to none. When Axl started singing, yeah, the voice wasn't the same as the 80s, but that's okay. He killed it, and he was amazing. And it was one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. I have a couple clips, I think, on the YouTube channel showing some of that concert, some of the raw footage. But yeah, Guns N' Roses was amazing live. I wanted to go back and see them again, but of course they jacked the prices the second time they came through, and I'm like, it's too much, but it was absolutely insane. There is one artist who I haven't talked about at all tonight, and he was one of my favorites kind of growing up as a teen. And he is a little bit rock, he's a little bit pop, and that's Meatloaf. I don't know if you guys remember Meatloaf, or if any of you were fans of his. Bad Out of Hell 1 with Paradise by the Dashboard Light, Bad Out of Hell 2 with I Would Do Anything for Love. Meatloaf was a strange dude, let's be real. But the music was inspirational. It reached out and grabbed you in a way, much like Guns N' Roses or Van Halen did. And so Meatloaf, when he came to Toronto, he actually played at Maple Leaf Gardens. And I bought tickets. And this wasn't your regular concert experience. Yeah, I was probably the youngest person there by a lot. But Meatloaf was a performer. He, wore the puffy kind of tuxedo shirt and the whole thing. And he went for it. If you ever get a chance, maybe YouTube some old Meatloaf concert clips. It was amazing. So I just wanted to take a moment and really touch on Meatloaf, because he was very inspirational to myself. One story I actually didn't mention when I was talking about the Stones. You guys remember many, many years ago, for the last almost pandemic, with SARS and the whole H1N1 flu. So Toronto did a big concert festival at Downsview Park. And I bought the DVD. Here we go, somewhere in there. Toronto Rocks. And this was probably one of the greatest lineups. You could see, almost 500,000 fans in attendance. It was a major festival. And so this lineup, and I can't really read it because the light is shining so bright. So Sam Roberts, not vintage, but he's great. The Tea Party, if you're into Canadian music, the Tea Party was amazing. I'm not sure how big they made it kind of down south in the States, but the Tea Party was phenomenal. You know, Blue Rodeo was there, but the Flaming Lips were awesome. I really can't read. God, my eyes are getting so bad. You know, Justin Timberlake was there, but he got booed off the stage. It was pretty bad. Now I'm sure if he was there today, people would go bananas. You know, the Isley Brothers, the Guess Who, AC/DC was there, and of course the Rolling Stones. So such a cool lineup to see so many of those performers play in one spot. I didn't get to go to the show. I actually had an exam in university the day of the show, so I saw all the traffic and all the people going, but I had to go write an exam. So I bought the DVD so I could watch it after the fact. So I've talked to you a whole lot, you know, about these amazing bands, and I want to share a story. And some of my old bandmates might be in here this evening. I'm not sure if they've had a chance to join or not, but I did want to tell you the story of when I had the chance to grow up and be a rock star. So going back, you know, with the Duran Duran influence and the Guns N' Roses and the Metallica, I knew I was going to be a rock guy. I always wanted to be a drummer, right? You go to parties and you see, you know, people would bust out the acoustic guitar and everyone would have a good sing along. It was a lot of fun. But I wanted to be different. I was different. I was the rock guy who liked Star Wars and, you know, that just it was the nerdy rock guy. That genre of person didn't exist. So I started taking drum lessons. And me and a couple of guys that were friends, we decided to create a band. And it was just myself, one guitarist, and a singer. And eventually we brought in a bass player and we started, you know, being like teenagers, young teenagers, goofing around. And eventually, like happens in all teenagers, we had a bit of a falling out. It happens, right? You know, we're making music, creative differences. We wanted to play one way. A couple of guys wanted to create all the music and have us follow suit. We wanted it to be more of a real kind of collaborative effort. And so, yeah, thanks, Sean. Actually, true story. The vest I'm wearing in that shot was my father's wedding vest. So thanks, Dad, for letting me rock out in your wedding vest. Um, so you know, we were down. It was just myself and the bass player who was left. We had a friend who played guitar, so we called him up. We said, "Hey, man, you want to come play guitar?" And we looked around to find a singer, and it wasn't that easy. So we managed to find a singer, and we started playing some shows. You know, a lot of Battle of the Bands. You know, anywhere, any contacts we got from those Battle of the Bands, we tried to, you know, use them to get in and play some bars wherever we could. But because we were all young, we were all underage, it made it difficult. Um, and so what ended up happening is through, you know, playing here or there, we got a call one day. Some guy, he was making an indie compilation CD, and he said, "Hey, I heard you guys. I'd love for you to come and be on this album." So we said, "Yeah, for sure." So we went. We recorded our single, which at the time it was called "Dangerous Lust." It had a pretty cool lick to it. Doom doo doom doom doo doom doom doo doom doo 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 doom doo doom doom doo doom doom doo doom doo doom doo doom. It was kind of bluesy rock song. And the day before we're going in to record, the singer's MIA, disappeared, gone, couldn't get a hold of him. Now there was a family emergency. He had to fly overseas. You know, we just had no idea. We didn't know what to do. We're like, shoot, we're going in the studio in like less than 24 hours. How are we going to find someone to sing? So we called up a buddy of mine, and we said, "Hey, man, shot in the dark. Any chance you ever thought about singing in a band?" And he said, "No, but hey, he's all for it," because it was myself and the guitarist. You know, three of us were all friends. So we said, "Hey, why not?" So we gave him the lyrics, we gave him the music. He learned the song that night. The next day we went in the studio, we killed it. So we recorded this indie CD and we brought it out. We sold a bunch of copies. It was cool. And then we get a phone call one day that the CD has actually been picked up by Q107, which is a radio station here in Toronto. Q107, they were doing Indie Hour every, whatever it was, Sunday night at 10 p.m. And they were going to play our song. So we're like, holy cow. So I didn't believe it. I thought, you know what? This probably happens all the time. We'll get our hopes up. We'll listen. It won't air. And sure enough, we're listening, and Q107 comes on, and they play our song, and we hear it on the radio, and we're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. We're recording it. Like I have the cassette tape. I recorded it off the radio, and at the end of the song, the guy says, that was Dangerous Lust by Amity featuring, and he listed all of our names and what we played. And when he said, and Sam on drums, I was like, oh my God, I was on the radio. I had the song on the radio. They said my name on the radio. This is the greatest thing ever. So then we started to really roll with it, right? We were writing more songs. We were doing as much as we could. And of course, as a teenager in a band, what becomes the most important thing that everybody needs? Band photos. So we went to the park, and I'm gonna share this photo. When we were taking pictures, we were trying to, look like rock stars. So this is my rock star drummer photo, my 8x10. So if this doesn't say teenage heartthrob, I don't know what does. Oh God, I can't believe I'm showing this, but this was awesome. This was such a good day. And the funny story is, before we took these pictures, we had the biggest fight. And I don't know, guys, if you're in here, you'll recall we had the biggest argument and the biggest debate. And we're like, that's it. We got to take these pictures and we're all going home. But it was awesome. It turned out to be so much fun. And it leads me to the last story I want to tell about my band, Amity. Some of you have probably seen on the YouTube channel, we have Amity on Jonovision. So Jonovision was a show on CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Company, Channel 6 in Toronto. And the show Jonovision, it was like a talk show. It was meant for kids. It was like, I don't want to say like Jerry Springer, but it was like a Jerry Springer, Ricky Lake, a talk show. So they had a theme, and the theme, they would discuss. So the theme for ours was, something like, I have a talent and I don't get support by my family. Some bizarre topic. I don't even remember the story of how we got signed up for this. And it was us, the band. We were the first band to ever perform on the show. There was another guy who wanted to be an actor who dressed up like Dracula and did like a monologue. And I don't remember who the third guy was. So the day of the show, we had a huge sleepover, entire band kind of spent the night, hopped in the car. We drove down, we took all our gear, we set everything up. We go to hair and makeup, which was an experience. We put on our performance outfit. So, my vest and pair of pants, set up the drums, but they gave me the riser was so small, I could barely fit all the drums and all the cymbals on the riser. And like the back leg of my stool was like pretty much hanging off the riser. And you can't really tell, but they brought in behind me this wall that had like this netting on it. And I kept like getting my arms stuck in the netting. It was bizarre. So they said, okay, we're going to do a rehearsal. We're going to, record it for blocking and stuff. So just perform as if we were doing the actual thing. Sure. So we went out there, we performed our song. It was a 3.5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. And we finished playing. They said, what are you guys doing? And we said, what do you mean, what are we doing? That's our song. They're like, no, you only have 90 seconds. You can't play 3.5 minutes. We're like, 90 seconds? You're telling us this like an hour before we're supposed to like go on live TV and perform this? Like, what the heck are we going to do with 90 seconds? So we quickly said, okay, we're going to do like verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, end. Like, cut everything out, do it super fast. So we pretty much threw it together on the fly. You can watch the video. The video's on the channel. We performed it, got a standing ovation from the audience. They went crazy. We won, we got a little gold medal at the end. And when some of the comments came out, people said, You guys sound a lot like Silverchair. And that was the comparison we were getting. And I kind of went, oh my God, I hate Silverchair. Of all the comparisons, why are we getting that? But then I said, you know what? It doesn't matter. They got up, they reacted, they said we were good. Enough said. So we wrapped the show. We left, and we had a lot of fun. We played more shows, around Toronto. Some big name places. We played the Opera House, the Gasworks, the 360. Some big name venues. A lot of fun. We did play Kingswood at Canada's Wonderland for a Battle of the Bands. I know on my first Wonderland stream, I think I told that story. But yeah, performing at Wonderland was insane. And so after this had aired on TV, all of a sudden we got a phone call and they said, "Hey, we're getting some letters about you guys. Can I forward them to you, or do you want to come pick them up?" So I'm like, "Yeah, I'll just send them all to me." I was going through these letters. It was nice to get some fan mail, but there was a gentleman out in Calgary who actually wanted us to fly out to Calgary and make an album, like a real album. And so this was a real challenge for us because we were just finishing high school at this point, applied to colleges and universities, and we all had to make a decision, right? Do we go to college or university, or do we take off kind of the first year of, uh, college, university, and fly out to Calgary and try and make an album and see what happens? And I think we all chose to go to college, university, and do the education first. So not a regret, not a regret by any means. Do I think we would have been huge? No. Do I think we would have had a lot of fun and enjoyed it for maybe, a couple of months? Probably, but that's okay. The experiences we had performing was enough to last me a lifetime, and I'm glad I got to share that story with you. So if you haven't watched the Jonovision clip yet, definitely go and check it out. It's a hoot. The quality is terrible because it's like an old analog TV to VHS to attempt to record it digitally. Um, but yeah, it was awesome. But going back to the real stars of the show, these bands that we all grew up watching and listening to really shaped us. And I'm glad that, in the chat earlier, some of you guys were telling your stories and mentioning the bands that you guys really liked and enjoyed to listening to. And I'd love if there's one that we haven't mentioned yet, call it out in the chat. I'd love to see if there's a band or a group that I just haven't thought of today, that you would want to call out, and maybe we could spend a few minutes talking about, because like I said, there are so many out there. It's so hard. Yeah, Black Album listened to nonstop. It was something unheard of. I think this chat is just going really, really slow, and some of these are older comments just scrolling through. But we talked about the Black Album. Faith No More. We haven't talked about Faith No More at all. Faith No More, wasn't a huge band, a huge influence, but that song Epic, to me was, I could listen to that all day long. Um, uh, Eric Clapton. Oh boy, how can we talk about kind of retro music without talking about Eric Clapton? Eric Clapton, and especially Layla, um, Tears in Heaven, um, you know, what a profound influence during the high school days to hear songs like that, and what they really, really meant. Um, I was into Blackfoot in the late 70s and early 80s. I'm not familiar with Blackfoot, Coach. I'm gonna have to go look that up. That one doesn't ring a bell for me. Uh, oh, of course, me being Canadian, I talked about Rush and Guess Who and whatnot. But Brian Adams, I've seen several times, and again, he's not back this far, but he definitely, was in the 80s and the 90s. Brian Adams was unbelievable, such a good performer. I remember I saw him also at Maple Leaf Gardens, and he stopped the show in the middle, and he kind of was asking people in the first few rows if they had any tissue, because he had a really bad cold and he had to blow his nose. Thought that was hysterical. Um, but yeah, really, really cool performer, Brian Adams. Um, And oh, there was one other, it was just on the tip of my tongue, and now I'm forgetting it. Oh my gosh, the Tragically Hip, of course. Gord, the late Gord. You know, the Hip. It doesn't matter which generation of hip fan you were into, the older stuff, the newer stuff. When I graduated high school, my grad quote was a line straight out of the song Courage. Um, it was something along the lines of, um, what was it? There's nothing more important than anything. I don't remember. God, it was so long. But yeah, I was a huge hip fan. Loved Courage, Wheat Kings, 50 Mission Cap, of course. Pat talks about 50 Mission Cap all the time. Um, the hip was just so influential here, and really, really did a number to set us off musically. Um, those are really the bands I wanted to spend a lot of time talking with you guys today. And hopefully that's brought back a lot of great memories. There are certain songs that come on the radio today that just do it, right? It just hits you in that spot, and you're like, I remember where I was when I heard this song the first time, or I remember which people I was with when I heard this. And of course, oh my gosh, one of the biggest bands. How could I not mention them? Maybe because I wasn't a huge fan, but I know they have a huge following. Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam was an Eddie Vedder, back then with Jeremy, and Pearl Jam again was just one of those bands that really transcended it, that whole generation. Oh my gosh, when I talk about Pearl Jam now, it's all rushing back to me. How can we forget U2? U2 was the band, when I was in grade 5 and 6, maybe? I think it was in grade 5 and 6. We had two guys in our class that their nicknames, they called themselves Bono and the Edge. And I came into the school late. So no, when I met them as Bono and the Edge. And I'm like, who on earth names their kid the Edge? It didn't even click on me about U2. And, when I started hanging out with them, you know, with the Joshua Tree and Rattle and Hum, and you know, they just kept growing and growing. And for a long time, I didn't get it. I didn't get what U2 was all about until I got older. And I really started listening to the music, and then it kind of spoke to me. One of the jobs I worked with, I had, see you later, Max. Have a great night. Thanks so much for stopping in, buddy. We'll see you on the stream real soon. The job I was at, I had the opportunity to be in a venue when U2 was performing, and hearing it live, hearing those guys do their thing was just, it just made you stop and think. You're like, here are these two guys that every song has different sounds, and the amount of pedals they use on the guitars, and the way they twist and use the instruments to create new and unique sounds, just puts them up there in the next level. And what I'm afraid of, I when I'm in the car, and which isn't that often because I've been working remote for a long time now, but when I'm listening to Sirius XM or the radio, I'm always on 90s on 9, or some of the rock stations. I don't really hear a lot of new rock today, and I'm afraid that the feelings and the sounds that I grew up with Duran Duran and Guns N' Roses and the Stones and all of that, there isn't a next band like that today. And there are some, they're out there, but they're just not making the same impact that these bands had. Even if I take it down from the mega superstars and we go back to like Spin Doctors and some of those type of bands, they just don't seem to be there. Hootie and the Blowfish, again, getting a little bit more modern, but Hootie and the Blowfish, Darius Rucker, I know he's doing his country thing, or was doing his country thing, was amazing. And Hootie was, again, they had such a unique sound. And today, all the sound is, digitized in computer and generated. And, it's becoming more, yeah, pop is still there, but it's becoming more rap and hip hop. And it bothers me that there isn't, a real band. There's something about going and seeing someone with a guitar, a bass, the drums on a microphone and performing and letting it all out. I could rant about this forever. And as I'm talking, there's so many names flashing, back and forth between my eyes that I just can't even call them all out. Um, the one name that another one that comes to mind that I haven't mentioned, at least I don't think I've mentioned, um, is the boss, Bruce Springsteen. So Bruce has a very special place for my heart. And Christina G, if you say you're also related to Bruce Springsteen, I'd say I'm going to pack it up and go home, but I'm already home. The boss is, so growing up, born in the USA, even though I was not born in the USA, was one of my favorite songs, hands down. Sorry, I got to take a little sip. Cheers if you have a little bubbly with you. So growing up, my dad had the opportunity from his work. He had box tickets to go see Bruce Springsteen. For whatever reason, my mom didn't want to go, so he said, "Hey, come, we're gonna go see Bruce." I couldn't tell you how old I was. It was like 8. Was I 9? Was I 10? I was little. So some of this story might be a little exaggerated, but probably not. So I remember seeing Bruce. I sat on the edge of my seat the entire show. He was the first concert, the first live actual concert I ever saw. Sure, I saw, the kids' bands and kid shows and stuff. But Bruce was the first real show I ever saw. My dad took me. And watching him perform, he loved what he did. He was there. He was happy. He was in his place. He probably played 3 hours straight, no intermission. They literally had to drag him off the stage, and I'm sure it was part of the act. They try and drag him off the stage, and he keeps running back out and keeps performing more and more. But Bruce just took it to the next level. So we're getting close to the top of the hour. I cannot, I cannot close the stream without telling that story about Bruce Springsteen. So I'm glad you guys have gone along with this kind of journey back in time with me. There's still so many more bands we haven't even scratched the surface of. But I didn't want to just make a list and talk about, everyone. I want to talk about the big guys. And I think we accomplished that tonight. So I hope it brought back a lot of good memories for you. Again, with Van Halen, with, oh my gosh, here's another one. How on earth could I not mention this band? And I'm a little upset with myself for not thinking about this. I'm just trying to find something on my phone real quick. But how can we not talk about the Police? Now, Sting on his own, yeah, I wasn't a huge Sting fan. But the Police was epic. The Police growing up, Message in a Bottle, Roxanne. Oh, so good, they were one. I'm sorry. Yeah, I had to mention Police. Hey, Memes and Beans, welcome in. Glad you found us and able to get in tonight. Memes and Beans, I'll ask you any band that comes to mind from back in the day that you enjoyed, that you want to call out tonight. I know we've covered all the big ones now that I've mentioned, Springsteen, the Police, the Stones, the Who, AC/DC, Van Halen, Guns N' Roses. I think we've covered, just about everybody except for like Bare Naked Ladies, good Canadian band. So with that, I'll just give kind of last call for the games. Get your last kind of bets in. Last chance if you wanted to call out a band to, or maybe give a couple words on a story. But Stone Temple Pilots, yeah, STP, amazing. Like I think I said earlier, Plush is my favorite karaoke song because usually I can do lower down than the higher ones. Interstate Love Song, classic, right? When you talk about Stone Temple Pilots, there's also what was the band? Black Hole Sun? No, what was the who sang it? Black Hole Sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? You know what? Uh, you guys are gonna tell me. I can't remember the name. They were right up there with Stone Temple Pilots. Um, oh gosh, it drives me nuts that I can't think of I can't think of the band. Um, but yeah, there's so many. One Direction. Yeah, hey, One Direction is definitely one we'll talk about on our pop pop uh, stream. The Truth. Hmm. That one doesn't ring a bell either. But there's so many great performances out there. And so many great 80s bands. And I'd love Soundgarden. Thank you, Coach. My goodness. And I'm hoping my wonderful singing hasn't scared everybody away. Soundgarden. Spoon Man. Yeah, Soundgarden. Awesome. Awesome, Soundgarden. Oh my gosh. And now, see, now you're getting me on a whole other row. Nirvana. A little bit more modern. But, how can we talk retro music and go through the ages of these bands and not talk about Nirvana? um, and Dave Grohl, who, when Foo Fighters started, and I'm like, hey, that's the drummer for Nirvana. They're not going to go anywhere. Drummers don't sing. Yeah, Foo Fighters is like huge now. Um, but Nirvana is such a crazy, what a great band and what a crazy story, And we talk about Nirvana, all of a sudden that's going to roll us right into Green Day. You go from Nirvana to Green Day, and Green Day, again in high school, Basket Case, and now we're going to start spiraling, right? All of these, now we're getting into the grunge era. We went from like the rock into the grunge, and it's just going to keep going. Everlast was a good one. Um, we went, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Our Lady Peace. They were huge up here in Canada. Okay, last story. I promise. I promise. I know it's a very busy night for streams, and I appreciate you guys giving me the time. Muse, another great one. So here's a story about Our Lady Peace. A buddy of mine called me up and he said, Sam, I want to go to see Alanis Morissette. Our Lady Peace is opening for Alanis Morissette. It's going to be a great show. Do you want to come with me? I said, hell yeah. I love Alanis. Jagged Little Pill was such a great album. And Our Lady Peace was so good. And I'm like, I've seen them before. But I'm like, yeah, let's go. So he bought the tickets the day before the show, calls me up. It was a Saturday show. And he said, so the show starts at 12. What time do you want to head out? And I said, what do you mean the show starts at 12? And he's like, oh yeah, and it's in Barrie, at Molson Park in Barrie, which was like a big festival grounds. Like in here, I'm like a teenager, right? And I'm like, dude, I don't know if I'm allowed to take the car and drive to Barrie, you know? So we uh, we did. We hopped in the car. The parents said, yeah, you can drive to Barrie. Now, if you're not familiar with Ontario. Barrie is probably an hour and a bit. No, maybe not an hour, 45 minutes north of kind of Toronto, maybe an hour north of Toronto. So we drove up, and sure enough, it was a festival, and it was Wild Strawberries, Dinosaur Jr., a couple others, and Our Lady Peace and Alanis Morissette, which was awesome. Um, But this has been so much fun, guys, and I appreciate it. I love that you guys, in the chat are calling out band names because it's really bringing back a lot of memories for me. Um, oh, I know I said that was the last story, but I can't stop. Lenny Kravitz, again, more modern age, but Lenny Kravitz was unreal, and I had the pleasure of seeing him also at Maple Leaf Gardens. And opening up for Lenny Kravitz was Blind Melon. If you guys remember Blind Melon with No Rain, another one of these kind of 90 bands that I don't even know whatever happened to them. I think the Blind Melon got in huge trouble because there were some shows. I think he like peed on the audience or something like that. They got all these fines. It was a whole thing. But yeah, Blind Melon was amazing. Lenny Kravitz, keep going. Thanks, Coach. You might regret saying that. But yeah, Lenny Kravitz was amazing. He played. I think he did a Super Bowl. I know he did a Grey Cup halftime for the Canadian Football League. I think he did a Super Bowl halftime as well. Lenny Kravitz was so good. As we keep moving into the more modern age, of course, Blind Melon closest to Morrison I've seen. Yeah, very, very true. Very true. Very good comparison. Um, as we get more modern, we start getting now into the Dave Matthews era, right? And I think, most people probably listening today, everyone know Dave Matthews, especially, with our good friends, Tom Does Disney and Rope Drop. Make sure to check their streams out. Um, but they're all about Dave Matthews, and they always talk about Dave Matthews. Dave Matthews, for me, was kind of, you were a Tragically Hip fan, and then you kind of crossed over into the Dave Matthews. And I remember before Dave was huge, was still in high school at the time. We went out by the Toronto airport. There was a concert hall. It's really just a warehouse. It's actually a big all the big card shows and conventions go through this warehouse building. And Dave came and he literally played the warehouse, and that was the first time I ever heard him live or saw him live. Um, I remember uh, going to see Dave. We waited in line. We went to this concert in the warehouse. A band by the name of Groove Collective opened up for him. They were like an acid jazz type of style. And then Dave came out, and you could stand at the front and party and bop around, or you could go kind of hang out and chill out on the floor and sit back and relax. That was the first ever kind of all general admission warehouse show I ever went to. It was Dave Matthews, and I don't know how many times I've seen him since, but uh, he was amazing, and he's still amazing to this day. Um, Dave is one of those all time great performers. When everything started with COVID, the pandemic, was it Verizon? There was a company that was doing every Friday night an acoustic at home kind of live stream performance, and I know Dave Matthews did one, and it was so cool just to see him performing from home. Really was pretty wild. Oh, wow. So I know we went on a huge tangent. I think we've covered a lot of 70s, 80s, 90s, even a little bit into today. Um, so with that, I think now's a good time to kind of wrap it. We will definitely continue the music conversation because there's so many more forms of music we have to talk about. The music of movies and television shows. Of course, Star Wars and Jaws and Indiana Jones to shows. Growing Pains, Family Ties, Full House, I Dream of Jeannie. Music inspires us in so many different ways and so many different avenues. So we'll definitely do that on a stream. We're definitely going to talk about the pop side, Michael Jackson and Madonna and Prince. Maybe if that conversation leads the way to today, to go from kind of the retro era into a little new age, we'll start talking a little Boys to Men, New Kids on the Block. We'll make sure to cover it for everybody so everybody has something. My pleasure, Coach. These are awesome, and I love to be able to take a break from reality and dig back in to the past and relive and share these stories and share the excitement with you all. Next week, we will be back again Tuesday night. We are going to talk cartoons. Everybody loved cartoons back in the day, Saturday morning cartoons, and it's a perfect segue from music because all of those great 80s cartoons had the best theme songs, whether it was Transformers or Gummy Bears or the Smurfs or the Snorks or Voltron, you name it. There was a soundtrack that went with all of those shows. Thundercats. We're going to talk about them all. Some that you may know, some that you may not know. I'm hoping you guys bring some to the table that I don't know because I'd love to learn more about it too. Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all you guys being here on this Tuesday evening. We look forward to speaking with you all again on streams throughout the week. If you think of any other bands that we didn't mention today, and I know we covered a lot, I feel like I should have a big whiteboard, write them all down. But if you think of a band that we haven't discussed, leave it in the comment down below. I'd love to interact with you guys. Tell me, who your band was, what songs you'd love, and let's chat about it. Just because we're going to end the stream tonight doesn't mean the conversation has to stop. So use the comments. Let's talk music. Think of those cartoons for next week, and we'll dive right in. So thank you guys. Have a fantastic evening. Have an even better week. And remember, we'll see ya real soon.